Awesome, Jen. Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited to chat with you. I'd like to start with some rapid fire questions. So, number one, first and foremost, what is your biggest fitness pet peeve you wish people would stop doing?
I'm gonna have to go with like all or nothing theory.
Okay.
I think that especially when people push that on, like you need so much discipline and you've got to get up and you've got to do it. And it's like sometimes I feel like that could put more guilt and shame on someone
Yeah.
rather than actual encouragement and motivation.
Yes, I love that. Have you ever been into that all or nothing mindset yourself?
I feel like I was encouraged to be there based on the need or what I had to do. So again, more of like guilt and shame rather than actually showing up because I wanted to or for my body.
Yeah, for sure. What trend right now do you think is just like a load of shit that you're seeing online?
I would say I don't love when people are demonizing a particular exercise. I think there's room for all different types of exercises and it depends on so many different factors, but telling someone what not to do doesn't help actually get someone moving.
I love that. What is one exercise that you see right now that people are demonizing the most?
I think one that is always kind of popular are burpees, which, everyone has their own opinion and everything.
Yeah.
But again, time, place, depending on what you want and what you love.
Yeah, I get that. What trend do you think is actually worth the hype right now?
I actually love like fun movement challenges because I think it gets
Cool.
you, trying something new, laughing, exploring movement, exploring your body, whether you could do it or not. I think those are always fun to see going around.
What is has there been a challenge recently that you've seen or done yourself?
Oh my God, I can't do anything right now. I'm like
You're
eight and
like,
a half
well,
months
I'm
pregnant, but
too pregnant for
but I
this.
love seeing them all, and I
Yeah.
save them and tell Dom about like, oh, we got to try this later.
Yeah. You guys have a lot of really cute like videos that you do together that are just like you kind of like bounce ideas off of each other. So I'm sure once you actually have the baby, you'll be like, let's do all
Yeah,
these movement challenges next.
yeah. Once I
What
feel
do you
good in
feel
my
like?
body again.
Yes, of course. What is the most underrated tool for building muscle?
I think just having the awareness that you can pick up something a little heavier,
Yeah.
and that scares so many people. Like I think of my mom when she trains with me and I'll pull out a weight and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm
Yeah.
like, "You could do this. I know you could do this."
How often do you train your mom?
She comes and works out with me 1 to 2 times a week, probably.
That's awesome. I love that. How long
Yeah.
have you been doing that together?
I mean, she's always been an avid person who is just movement and working out as part of her lifestyle. So
Cool.
whether I was teaching Pilates or anything. She was always kind of in and working out with me.
Oh, that's so nice that you're able to like be in her journey with you.
Yeah.
What is your number one piece of advice for someone who's scared to take up space in the gym, in the weight room, or just like as a woman with muscles?
I would say everyone is pretty focused on themselves when you walk into a space. So remembering that no one's actually paying that close of attention and you
Yeah.
can go and do your own thing. And I promise people will not remember, even if you mess something up or you do something silly, like people are probably not going to remember.
The last one of the last times I was at the gym, I was trying to use a belt, like the belt squat machine.
Yeah.
I could not figure this out, and it kept hitting the top, and I didn't know how to like change the chain. And I was just like looking around, like I felt like so stupid. But it's like everyone, I've even been in the industry for 12, 15 years, and I still like don't know equipment all the time. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you
Of
saying that.
course.
We're all just learning all the time.
Yeah.
So your whole, I mean, this isn't everything about you, but Doc Jen Fit or Dr. Jen is mobility. She's the mobility queen. So can you help us understand what mobility actually is?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. I kind of stumbled into the world of mobility. I would say when I started posting more educational stuff, I always started the baseline of talking about a pain or a diagnosis with mobility and then built upon that. But what everyone wanted to see was mobility. And I think at the time that I started on social media, which was what, like 10 years ago, so it's
Yeah.
been a while, there wasn't a lot of that. It was workouts, it was look at what's cool, but there wasn't a lot of mobility unless it was yoga. So I think being newer in that space led me to people to find me based on that and want to absorb more of that, which is great. I think, mobility is our baseline. It is where we can develop active movement within our body, not just passively stretching, but actively being able to find our full range of motion and being able to actually control that.
Okay, so then what is the difference between mobility and stretching or yoga or flexibility, really?
For me, mobility is on a spectrum. I, again, don't demonize one versus another. So, passive stretching can play a role within mobility depending on what someone's system and body needs. Passive stretching is going to be more like you're laying on your back, you're pulling with a strap, or someone is pushing your leg or your body part and trying to create a stretch where you're not having to do anything. Right. And I think there's a time and a place for that within mobility. If you are super tight, you're super restricted, your nervous system is just kind of locked up, you're going to need to downregulate and have a little bit of passive stretching. So I think that plays a role within mobility. Then when we go across the spectrum, it's like, okay, now can I take this range that I've acquired from being able to calm down my nervous system and get a little bit more passive range and make it a little bit more active? Can I lift my leg without holding it? Can I control that range of motion? Can I do it standing now? Can I do it in different positions? Can I do it against gravity? So we start to explore different positions and different ways that we move our body. And then last, I think that mobility also plays a role in how we're loading our system. So we can add weight. We can, okay, say we were talking about our hamstrings. Now we're doing RDLs and we're doing more stiff legged deadlift where we're moving our body through a range of motion under load and under control. That is all a part of mobility. So I think, for me, I talk about mobility being more on a spectrum depending on what your body needs at the time.
So you would say then mobility can be the same as or included in stretching, flexibility, and yoga.
Yeah, it can definitely be included. And I've
I love
been
that.
to many different types of yoga classes where people focus more on the active range of motion and the active control or holding an end range of motion. And then there's yin classes that are focused more on just passive stretching and breathing and relaxing in your body. So there's such a variety and there's not just one or another. And I think that's when we get into trouble is when we're trying to put people in a box or put some term in a box that doesn't need to be there.
I love that you say that because that is so true. People think that like it's only one thing. And even just like what you described with yoga, I was a power vinyasa yoga teacher, which is so different than a yin or a deep stretch and
Yes.
meditation. Or
Yeah.
there's so many different styles of training, just like with fitness and burpees and hit training and so it's really cool that if somebody hears this right now and they're like, well, I do go to a yoga class, is that mobility? How can they decipher then that if they are doing those mobility drills that you're talking about in yoga?
So your body tends to gravitate more toward what you naturally like and what is easy for you. And this is where I see a lot of yogis gravitate toward yoga because they're already hypermobile. So being in a class that allows you to open up and stretch and feel good and like it's easy for you. So
Right.
it's not challenging your body to do something different. And that's what we really kind of have to pay attention to. Because if you're already a hypermobile person and you can kind of do some quick assessments of that, of like a hitchhiker's thumb, if your thumb bends back all the way, if you can almost like touch your finger to your forearm or touch your thumb to your forearm, if you're hyperextended in your elbows or your knees, these are all signs you could have hypermobility within the body. So gravitating towards something that's just passively putting you into those end ranges of motion, probably not the best. You probably need to understand how to control, how to activate your range of motion within your body rather than just passively stretching. So we have to really be mindful of what do I like because it's easy and it's natural for my body to feel like it can do. I mean, this is even with strength training. Like it could be natural and easy, but have you challenged yourself in other ways? So I think there's always a way of like understanding if you're more hypermobile, you probably don't need more of the passive stretching. You probably need to be a little bit more active, a little more intentional, a little more controlled. And this is also where we see people kind of getting injured in workout classes and stuff because we're not always paying it. Maybe you are more hypermobile and you're just blowing through movements and you're not controlling it. You're not slowing it down. You're doing a hit class, a circuit class, and it's super fun and motivating and high energy, but you haven't ever been taught how to control your body and control your movement through its range of motion. That can lead to injury.
What do you feel like is the easiest way for someone to really feel in control of their body?
Slowing something down. Like, and this is what I love to do with people because it forces you to really pay attention. Like, you could do a step up fast,
Yeah.
sure, but slow, just do a step down really, really slow.
Yeah.
And you're like, my knee is wobbling, my heel is wanting to pop up, my core is all over the place, my back is wanting to round. You start to experience and see these little things start to open up within your body. And that could be maybe you are limited in your hip range of motion. You're doing a step up that's way too high. Maybe you are limited in your ankle range of motion. And so your heel is wanting to pop up. When we start to slow down a movement, we can really start to identify where in our body we're kind of limited. And what if we started to address those first prior to doing the higher level stuff?
Do you know what I thought you were going to say? Because I love that answer and so appreciate it, but I thought you were going to say your breath.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I do go through to breath for everything.
Yeah, because I was like, that's like kind of how you yeah, and explain that because I know you and I know that that's like a
Yeah.
huge part of your programming and stuff. But like, why do you also feel like your breath is a really valuable way to like be in tune with your body too?
I mean, the breath is the access point into mobility.
Yeah.
It depends on, how we're breathing will really dictate our stress and tension within our body or our relaxation and ability to feel and to expand a little bit more. So this is why I always start at the breath, especially because I'm dealing mostly with people in pain. And pain is heightened when we're in a very protective mode within our body. Maybe you've been told a certain thing about your body, about you shouldn't round your spine, or your hips are rotated, so you have to be careful when you're doing XYZ. The more that we tell people what's wrong with their body and what needs to be, or what you need to be aware of your body, the more that people start to protect and kind of stiffen up. And when we stiffen up, we don't allow for the laxity and the movement within our body. And this is where coming back to the breath in order to reset our nervous system, I find is one of the most powerful tools I've ever been able to have as a physical therapist. Beyond me doing any kind of special technique on you, it's how you're breathing and it's how you're feeling within your body to create more ease and less protection in order to feel and see a different result.
Adding that and then slowing down movements can
Yes.
actually make you feel even more intentional with what you're doing.
Totally. I mean, and this is, I was even looking at research today, looking at posture because it's something that I'm in right now. But when we're looking at posture, we can see that there's no one perfect posture. And actually striving to hold an upright posture can lead people into more pain than actually just having a relaxed, rounded back or forward head. And that's because we're creating more stress and tension in our body when we're forcing a posture or a position for an extended period of time that our body is not used to being in. And so it's completely backwards from what a lot of people believe about their body and believe what they're supposed to fix and what they're supposed to look like and all of these things. If we could just go back to the baseline of feeling safe within our body again and then understanding how to control it, we can create and feel so much different.
And then I think also with that, we can create so much space to improve in so many aspects.
Yes.
Yeah, which leads me into mobility for building muscle, because, that's a huge piece of it as well. Why do you feel like this is a crucial aspect of to be able to lift heavier and improve strength?
It's hard to directly correlate mobility to improving strength or having muscle growth because at the end of the day, we can have muscle growth from just overloading that that part of the muscle, right? In so many different ways. So it's not necessarily that you have to go into a bigger range of motion in order to see a change in your muscle growth. But I believe that what we don't use, we lose. And we've all heard that. So if I'm going to suddenly only squat to 90 degrees and only train that range of motion because that's what I've been told is safe and good for my body, well, sure, you're going to get stronger within that range, but you're going to lose the access to the full range within your body. So now, when you're trying to squat a little bit lower, you might feel a little bit more unstable as you're starting to stand up, especially as we start to age. This is something that we see largely, especially as a physical therapist. One of the first things we're going to do is how fast can you sit to stand? How many reps can you sit to stand? How comfortable, how powerful, how much endurance, and how much strength do you have in your body to be able to do that? So if we limit that access to be able to get there, then we limit how much control we have in our body and how much strength we have long term. So that's why I think, maintaining as much mobility as you can as you age, being able to go and squat as low as you can within your hips and within your knees, within your ankles, that allow within your body, and you train that over time, you're just going to be an overall stronger, freer person within your body.
When you have your clients at these older ages squat down to something, is there a certain level that they should be at, or is it really just squatting down to a chair and standing up?
I mean, it's really going to what your capacity is.
Okay.
So there's no one answer, right? So I, when I'm having my mom sit to stand with a barbell on her back,
Right.
she's going onto a little bit higher of a surface because that's what feels safe and comfortable for her knees and her body. And then gradually, if we can even take a lighter load, but start to get her a little bit lower, we can start to improve that range of motion. For so long, she's been told she has bad knees. She can't squat so much. So we are rebuilding that pattern within her body and that trust to be able to do a different pattern and see a different result.
So I've seen this online. I also have done it before and I've seen you do it, but sitting down all the way to the ground and standing up
Yes.
without hands or without twisting or without like doing anything. Do you think that that is helpful for people to do and as they age, or is it more just, yeah, of course I can still use my hand to get up, so why wouldn't I?
I mean, no, if we can sit to stand all the way from the ground, there's a little bit of a correlation in terms of life expectancy. It's not huge, but
Okay.
as much as we can reduce the amount of assistance that we need from sitting all the way on the ground to standing all the way up without hands, without wobbling, without falling, without knees, um, the more that we see a longer life expectancy. Why? Because all of a sudden you're increasing your strength, your power, your mobility. So if you fall or if something happens, you can get up. And that's the most important thing. And something that is so detrimental as we age. If you fall, your life expectancy and you fracture your hip, your life expectancy is significantly lowered. So if we can reduce the risk of falls, if we can reduce how we're falling and how we're getting injured and being able to get off the floor, that's so incredibly powerful for our body. So there's so many ways to train this, but literally sitting on the ground and trying to stand up or going to a as low of a surface or a stool or a chair and standing up and working on that is a workout in itself because you're going to be training your strength, your power, and your endurance from a lower and lower and lower range.
Could you give an example maybe of what might be where might you not have as much range of motion if you can't fully stand up from the ground?
For a lot of people, it's hips and knees and ankles. I mean, those are the three areas, and it depends on what it is within your body. But also, so often we restrict how we're bending in our knees because we've been told a certain thing. So it's not necessarily that you have a limitation within your knee, it's that you haven't allowed your body to bend into your knee that far. But maybe if you lay on your back and you bend your knee to your body, you can get full range of motion. You can get your knee to your chest, you can get your calf to your thigh, and everything kind of compresses in. But then when you stand and you go do it, you stick your bottom out really far, you keep your knees over your ankles, and you've been told your knees can't pass your toes, right? And so you all of a sudden are doing this 90-degree squat for how many years? You haven't taught your body how to squat lower. And so it takes so much time to be able to rebuild this pattern within the body, and the strength to be able to sustain and hold your body in a new range of motion. But it is possible. It just takes time, a lot of time. And one thing that's super easy to be able to do is putting your leg on like a bench or a chair, using support around you and trying to bend your body into your knee. How much can you compress into your knee? How much can you compress into your ankle and your hip? Can you hold that for a little bit and back off? Can you do reps back and forth? This is something that I was getting my mother-in-law to do, because her as well hasn't been trained, has been so trained to keep the knees back and not bend so much into the knee. So we're retraining that strength around the knee joint to be able to protect. And the only way we get that is when we start to retrain the quads and the muscles to be able to protect our body, to hold in that knee joint. And it's just so sad that we see changes on an MRI, or a doctor sees changes on an MRI, and they say you can no longer do this, or you need to be careful for this. And again, it's that protection within the body that we end up building rather than the resilience that we need.
Why do you feel like mobility is just such an overlooked thing right now?
Well, it's the easiest thing to go. We don't have time. And I get it. It's the time restriction and the overwhelm of our day. And if I feel like, well, in order to be healthy, I have to work out, what am I going to choose? Like, I'm going to try to get a walk or a workout in over just trying to improve my mobility, because that sounds overwhelming. I don't really know what to do. I don't know where to start. That might take hours. I don't have time for yoga. So I'm just going to do what I feel would be the bare minimum, which is great. Like, if someone can move, I'm excited about that. And there are ways that we can sprinkle it in.
How can we easily sprinkle it in to maybe someone that does like to strength train or work out doing HIIT training or something that doesn't feel like an extra thing? Because I think myself included, and with my clients, people don't want to do mobility because maybe it's like not hard, or they don't get a sweat in, or it's not an actual workout. So like,
Mhm.
why would I do this kind of thing?
Right. Well, if you get out of bed in the morning and you feel like that, ugh, or that stiffness, or that, ugh, whatever it is that you're feeling when you get out of bed, what if you took 2 minutes to, grab the back of your leg and just you put your leg up and down a few times on each side. You laid on your side and you opened up your upper back a few times on each side, and then you got out of bed. What if that is how you started your day? Doesn't have to take long, 1 to 2 minutes, doesn't have to be a lot of reps, but you're changing your system and your perception within your body immediately prior to getting out of bed. What if instead of just going right into your workout, you had a couple, just two exercises that were mimicking the movement that you want to create within the workout, but a little bit slowed down, a little bit intentional, a little bit through their full range of motion, where you're not putting load on your body yet, but you're stimulating your body in a way that's going to help with squats, help to open up the hips, help to open up the ankles, but with no weight and in a way that's more active. That's mobility. What if you took time after your workout? You want a foam roll? Great. Use your breath when you're foam rolling. How much can you relax your breath? How much can you find that relaxation within your body as you're foam rolling or as you're passively stretching after a workout? That is one of the best ways to find that reduce stress after an intense workout and find more mobility within the body. So there's so many ways that we can start to sprinkle it in. That doesn't have to take a lot of time, but it is more intentional to what you're doing.
I will tell you, Jen, that for the past few months, I've been dealing with plantar fasciitis. And one of the
Mm.
first steps out of bed, I'm like, my foot hurts.
Mhm.
And now I've been super intentional about getting in all my ankle mobility drills and all of the PT stuff now, because that is literally the first thing I was feeling when I wake up. And I just don't want to feel that way. And oftentimes, people like maybe myself or someone else that's listening, you wait till you get to this point of like something hurts. And
Mhm.
by sprinkling it in your day or before your workout or shit while you're on the phone with someone, that gives you the chance to mitigate those injuries later on. So, highly recommend.
Totally.
Yeah.
And we usually often assume, like, okay, if I didn't have that pain before, well, then I need to go see someone. Someone needs to fix me because I haven't changed anything in my life. Where it's all of these little patterns that add up over time. It's not necessarily the one thing that you did. You didn't get in an accident,
Right.
but something happened. Something was overloaded over time based on your movement patterns, based on your habitual habits, or based on what you're neglecting to do within your body, that creates a change and creates this pain that you're not feeling. If you're going to someone to just get fixed, quote unquote, you are not changing the outcome of how that started. You're not changing the root cause. Anyone who puts their hands on you, we're not magicians. We are there to modulate your nervous system and have you feel something different based on the symptom, but we're not getting to the root cause unless you change something within your body. And I think, and I hope people get to hear and understand that we are facilitators into the body, but we're not there to fix you. And so being very, very clear on that. You have a pain doesn't mean you need to be fixed. It means we need to go back to the root cause. What were you neglecting? What were you not adding in? What can what habitual change can you start to make that can create a different pattern in what you're feeling?
Yes. And thank you for that because I definitely needed to change some patterns and now I'm feeling a little better.
There you go.
What do you feel like are some misconceptions, maybe just about mobility training or like when people hear it and they just don't understand it?
They think it's just yoga and stretching,
Okay.
which, again, has a place. That's fine. That's, but let's be intentional to what you want to create. If you want to go hiking where you are going down hills, or you're going and you're stepping up onto big rocks, like how can I improve my hip mobility in that capacity, in that active way? How can I make sure my knees can tolerate going forward as I'm going downhill so that I don't develop knee pain over time because I'm overloaded in a position that I haven't done in a long time? So that's where we just start to say, okay, how can I be a little bit more intentional with what my goal is in life? If I want to be able to sit on the ground and play with my child, or pick my grandson up off the floor, what kind of mobility do I need to be able to get down and stand back up? That's where we want to be looking at. And once we start to discover that why, hopefully we start to discover, you know, how we can start to make those changes.
When did you figure out what that why was? Or have you just been living in it because this is your life?
I think it's just been, I've always been fascinated by human movement, and that's what led me into physical therapy in the first place. And so I've just continued to learn and learn and learn and, and try to implement as much as I can for myself and what I've seen in my clients, and what I've continued to learn. And one of the biggest, most impactful things that I got to see when I was in PT school was working with people who had cerebral palsy or amputees, and especially cerebral palsy. It was like so cool because, you know, depending on the level of what they have within their body, there's contractures that are happening, right? And this one guy in particular, he was amazing, and he lived in a wheelchair, but he lived on his own. And watching him get down on the floor and change he was putting on like socks and buttoning his shirt, and you just want to help him. You're like, oh, I could do it fast, and he's like, I got it. Can't talk, and then puts himself back up onto his wheelchair, and watching him pull himself back up, it was incredible. And here's a person who is all out of alignment, all the imbalances within his body, right? He's got contractures, he's got different things, and his the time that he couldn't pull himself back up onto his wheelchair is where he started to add in swimming so that he can lose weight in order to be able to maintain and still be able to provide for himself. And it was those kind of situations where someone isn't saying, here's all the things that's wrong with me and here's all the things I need to fix. It was, here's what I have available and here's what I can do. And if I start to lose what I can do, how can I help that? And I wish that we looked at the body more as an able person to be able to see that, instead of like, oh, my shoulders are round, or this is rotated this way, or what, like starting to pinpoint these little imbalances and asymmetries that are normal and natural, and just start to appreciate, what can I do? What do I have available? If I start to lose that, what do I need to add in order to gain that back? And if we start to look at the body in such a different way and in so much more appreciation, then we can start to really feel and see a different result.
How do you feel like people can get to that point where they feel their why, or they see that? Is it something where you have to see someone else go through something, or what else?
You know, I think getting with the right provider. So if someone is continuing to tell you that XYZ is wrong and you need to stop doing this, you need to stop doing that, instead of stopping something, like, how can we change it? Yes, maybe an activity needs to change in a certain way based on what you're feeling within your body, but why should you stop it altogether? How can we find the opportunity and what we want to do, what we want to create, what we want to provide within our body? So it's so mentally driven within our body on what we feel on a day-to-day basis and how we move. And if you're with someone or you're having a doctor come in and say, this is the worst MRI I've ever seen, probably let's go see someone else.
Yeah.
Because an MRI, we know from research, doesn't tell us that we're going to have any pain or disability. That just doesn't correlate anymore. And we see this time and time again, just like we develop wrinkles on the outside of our face, we're going to develop wrinkles on the inside of our body, and things are naturally going to degenerate and change. That does not mean that you are going to have pain. So what else can we do? What else is available? And if you have that opportunity of saying, okay, this, and now what? What can I do? And I think we have to continue to move forward into the mentality of not, I can't do this, but what can I do? I don't have this, but what do I have? And when we continue, and it's not easy, of course not, but if you can continue to make those shifts, your pain levels, your disability, your availability to exercise is going to open up a lot more.
If someone was going to see a doctor and they said to not do a certain movement, like a
Mhm.
squat or a deadlift or a bench press or something, what could someone say to that provider?
I mean, honestly, I would say, okay, and I would leave. Because also know that an MD is not trained in training and helping someone in that way. So that's okay. They have their level of expertise, and that's okay. And trying to re-educate them in that moment probably is going not, it might not be the best use of your time. So then trying to find a trainer or a physical therapist or someone that you feel confident to work with in order to get you to your goals and what you want to do, I think is really important.
So if I'm just giving random
Yeah,
scenarios, but
no,
also
please
I'm
do.
sure people have heard this before, like stop squatting. That's
Yeah.
like a prime example that I think I hear a lot with hips or knees or ankles or something like that.
Yes.
And they're like, yeah, you should absolutely stop squatting. Now, in my mind, as a personal trainer, not a physical therapist, I'm like, well,
Yeah.
what do you do all day? You sit on a chair and stand up. You go to the bathroom and stand up. Like, aren't you squatting?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, right.
I
So,
know.
yeah, I mean, like, how could we help people understand that you can keep doing those things, but maybe just having more awareness of doing it, maybe just slightly different?
Exactly. I mean, that's the goal.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what's hard. It is hard to hear, like, I see an MRI, I see my image, I see what's happening to my knee. That looks awful. And now, of course, I don't want to squat. I don't want to make it worse. I don't want to, inflame it or make my pain any worse. So I get it. However, we have to see that the only thing that's going to protect the joint, as if it's quote unquote bone on bone, that's horrible diagnosis or way to say it, but if you are seeing that on an image, what is going to support that? Muscle. The muscles that we have around the knee is the only thing we have that's going to support that. And we have research that shows the more that we become strong in our legs and our body, then the better we are to have better ability to move and have less pain as we age. And if we do have osteoarthritis, So the only thing that we can do is train our muscles. So maybe that doesn't mean a squat right away, but are there different patterns that we can do to help to start to rebuild our muscle? And then how can we take a squat and modify it in a way that works for our own individual body? So then I can get back to the point where I can sit low on a toilet or go anywhere to go to the bathroom, whether it has a high toilet or a low toilet, and feel confident that I can bend in my knee and feel okay, and I can get back up without needing assistance. Because like, what is the opposite effect of that then? The opposite effect is that I get to deteriorate away because I'm not supposed to do anything. That's horrible. We can't,
Yeah.
we do, like the, it's so infuriating. We cannot have more fragile elderly people. We need more resilient, robust people as we age.
Now, if you are someone with, let's just use the knee because now we're using the knee.
Yeah.
Is is there a lot of like knee mobility, or would you say it's more of the ankle and hip that it comes from?
Uh, Both, all of it depends.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you do have osteoarthritis, you have limitation in the mobility that you have to bend the knee. So that's real.
Cool.
Do we still do want to be improving our hip mobility? We still want to be improving our ankle mobility to assist so that we're not putting all of the pressure on our knee. But it depends on the individual. We could have mobility restrictions all along.
What do you feel like are just some mobility exercises that literally anyone can do at any point that are just ones that we can give out?
Yes, if you are sitting at your desk, you can round in your spine and open up to the ceiling. That is one of the easiest ways. You can rotate in your chair, hold for a couple breaths on each side, and change the way that you're sitting. Again, we know there's not one perfect posture. You're going to be working, your gaze is going to come forward. It is natural for your head to follow because that's what's happening within our neurological system as we're working and we're focusing. So that's natural. But what we can do is then say, okay, how can I change my position more often throughout the day? And we also have studies that show the more you take active breaks or the more that you have postural sways and shifts within how you sit throughout the day, the less likely you're going to fall into pain. So that's an easy one, sitting. And then can you stand? Can you extend your hip into a hip flexor stretch since you've been sitting all day? Can you take your knee up and rotate it into a circle? I don't care what it looks like, rotate it into a circle. Can you sit on the ground in what we call hip 90-90, but it could be just sitting on the ground, cross-legged, one leg back behind you, other leg in forward, switch to the other way, see and explore what it feels like to sit on the ground again, fold laundry on the ground, watch a show on the ground. Take time to change your position from what you're typically doing. A lot of us are not getting on the ground enough unless we're doing a specific workout that requires it. And then, stretching into your toes. We would neglect our toes and our ankles so wildly, way too much. And we're putting our feet in these really cushioned shoes. Get your feet out of your shoes, walk around barefoot more, open your toes, try to sit on your toes, try to stretch into your ankles, do things that are going to address the places that we neglect.
Toes pose, one of the worst ever, ever. I'm talking about a yogi pose where you sit on your heels, but your toes
Yes.
are flexed underneath. And I have to do this, for some of
Yes.
the plantar fasciitis, and
Yes, you do.
it
You
hurts a
get to
lot.
do it.
Yeah, very true. Okay, is this a thing? Can I wear socks, or is that something that like I gotta just be barefoot and let my feet breathe?
I mean, as much as you could be barefoot, it's the best. We get the best connection to the ground, into our body. We have so many sensory nerves into our feet. So being able to feel the ground more often is going to be better. Ditch the house shoes. If you're going to start anywhere,
Mm.
wear super cushions, slipper socks or whatever, because those have a little bit more space and you're still like protecting your feet or keeping them warm, whatever. But ditch the house shoes. If you're home, you shouldn't be in shoes. Um, and the more that we're just restricting our body over and over again, the less it's going to be able to provide for us later on.
Okay, because I see some hardwood floors behind you though.
Yeah,
Are you wearing no shoes on that hardwood floor and concrete floor?
I'm wearing socks. I will say my feet get cold. So I wear socks, or I have Vivo Barefoot has slippers.
Okay.
So I wear some Vivo Barefoot slippers sometimes. But during summers, I am completely barefoot.
Okay.
And then I try to go outside with my son and be barefoot.
I love that. And I do agree, like being on the ground more is so helpful for so many people. I'm sure you are because you have a 2-year-old, right? He's two
Mhm.
now,
Almost.
almost two, and one on the way. So I'm sure you're on the ground a lot, just like
Yes.
moving around with your kids. I've been trying to get my husband to get on the ground with me, like while we're watching TV or something, and he just won't get there. So get on the ground, feeling
Yes.
more grounded, sit down, stand up. It's going to help so much later on. How do you feel like, besides those few things that you just told us, do you think that standing desks or, walking treadmill or those kind of things that have been very trendy for the past like year or so are helpful for mobility?
Totally. I mean, the more
Okay.
that we change our position and we move, great. I don't think that we can be standing all day.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to be walking all day. So I still think having a supportive chair that supports the pelvis into pushing it forward, it's less about the low back. It's more about kind of pushing the sacrum and your pelvis forward helps to naturally allow you to feel a little bit more upright. So having a supportive chair plus being able to stand plus being able to move, all great.
All great. Okay, so she gave us a couple mobility exercises that we can do anywhere, sitting, standing, or on the ground. How are just some ways we can just like habit stack them maybe into our daily routine?
I mean, that's where I say choose one thing that you can do before you get out of bed. Usually for
Cool.
people, it is like the open book is something that feels so good. When you're brushing your teeth, kick one leg behind you, stretch your calf, stretch your other calf, or place your arm on the doorway and stretch into your pec and then switch as you're brushing your teeth. Like there are so many simple ways that we can do this, right? Where we start to just kind of sprinkle things in and change what we normally do. That's what it's all about. If I'm normally hunched over a desk, how am I getting myself out of that? If I'm normally sitting, am I spending any time laying on my stomach propped onto my elbows? It's one of the best things that you can do for your back if you're sitting all the time. So start to find little ways. Maybe it's like, I'm going to check my phone right now. So I'm going to lay on the couch on my stomach and be propped onto my elbows. Or I'm going to talk on the phone and propped on my elbows. Or I've noticed I've been sitting a lot throughout the day. So I'm going to go and take this phone call on a walk. So how can we just, find those little moments of adding in mobility?
You guys, she just gave us so many different options, but I know that some of you are just going to be like, oh, I already forgot all of these. So take a post-it note, put it somewhere, give yourself a visual to actually get the thing done. Because as Jen was saying in the beginning, like we go to what our body's used to, more comfortable with, or just easy, right? I'm going to strength train because I love it. It makes me feel good, but I don't go to yoga because it's hard for me. Like, and I just don't go. So obviously, as we get out of our comfort zone, that is more room to grow and to
Mhm.
learn about our body. What other, just like any sort of other tips about mobility or just like getting someone just really excited to get in mobility with our training could we give them?
Oh man.
Or maybe
I
another
would say
example, because I'm sure you have tons of those too.
I do have a lot of examples, but I think one of the best ways also is having accountability. So whether that's you're joining a course, a challenge, you're asking someone of like to hold you accountable. Let's do this together. Let's try to strive for being able to touch our toes at the end of this month. Like, what are we going to do that? So creating goals, creating habits, creating new accountability, and joining something to learn. I mean, sometimes I get feedback from my courses and challenges that I speak too much because my goal is not to have you here just mimicking me, but it's to have you learn so that you can take the tools and use them anywhere else that you desire to get a workout or do other things in. I am not here to just have you mimic me. I'm here to have you learn what's happening and what's changing and why within your body. I'm a physical therapist. I can't not teach. So that's, I think learning can be so incredibly powerful in your body. And again, as go to someone who's going to facilitate that journey, not try to just fix you in a certain way.
How do you know if you go to someone that's trying to like just fix or kind of help you with your journey? How do you know who that
So
person can be?
they're assessing something and they're saying, "Oh, this is wrong. So I'm going to do this technique and it's going to improve that." And then afterwards, they say, "Okay, I'll see you back in a week or I'll see you back in whatever." But they didn't give you anything to why was that potentially something that was wrong? Was it even something that was wrong? What do I do for my own body to help to not get back into that place? You It's okay to ask questions as to why. I would encourage people to ask more questions why. And maybe, hey, listen, a clinician may not know why, and that's okay as well. But ask why and what you can do, what they recommend, what they suggest, what else that they would what can I do at home for my own body? And if someone's not giving you what you can do at home, run. They're just
Mm.
trying to take your money.
Yeah, I love that answer. It reminds me of when I went to see a pelvic floor therapist and I was just asking so many whys that she's just inside of me figured.
Yeah.
I'm like, why are you doing this? How can I do
Yes.
this at home? What can I do
Good.
here? Because
Good.
that's
I
how
love
we get
that.
to know our body, right? And that's
Yes.
how we feel more in tune and more body aware, and that we have now the tools and resources and people like you that can give us that to do ourselves. So I appreciate
Yes.
that. Okay, I've got some rapid fire ending questions for you. How much mobility training does someone actually need to just like do on a daily basis? Like, what do they really truly need?
Really, truly, you need to sprinkle in 1 to 2 minutes a few times throughout the day. Truly. It's like brushing your teeth. It doesn't
What
have to be like an hour at a time, but sprinkle in 1 to 2 minutes, even if that's breath work and getting your body to relax for a hot second. 1 to 2 minutes. That's it.
what is your favorite hip mobility drill?
Sitting on the ground and either crossing my legs the other way, doing hip 90-90, all of those. Anything on the floor.
I feel
Great for
like you
hips.
also love the standing hip flexor.
I mean, I love that one
Yeah,
because it
but
feels
not your
good,
favorite.
but not my favorite.
Okay, what about ankle mobility?
Literally just spending time like leaning into my ankle. So
Yeah.
usually in like a deep low, not lunge, but kind of bending my knee over my toe and trying to put as much pressure into there. And then I also then stretch my back toe as I'm sitting low into
Ooh,
that
okay.
position. So I get some toe and ankle going on at the same time.
Yeah. Actually, this is just a side question I thought of. Adding weight or bands to those type of things. How is that more for the advanced person, or could that be utilized for anyone?
It could be utilized for anyone. What we know about bands and mobilization is that it's not necessarily mobile, like mechanically mobilizing the joint, but it provides touch. It provides feedback. Anytime we have touch and feedback on the system, we can help to create down regulation and we can help to assist into more range of motion. But it's not necessarily gapping the joint or creating more space in the joint as we originally thought some of these joint mobilizations were doing.
Okay. And I was also talking about, because we were talking about the ankle drill, like a
Yeah.
kettlebell or a dumbbell or
Oh,
something.
yeah, like adding external weight to it.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you're kind of not doing it yourself. It's like the kettlebell's doing
yeah,
the work for you. Would that be something you could suggest or?
totally. I think it always depends. Like I've had someone do just body weight and then the next day they're like, I feel like I pulled my Achilles, so
Right.
so everything is in a range. If you've never done an ankle stretch before, start with no weight. Just lean over your body, start to breathe. Don't push, especially with stretching and passive stretching. The goal isn't to push beyond, your comfort zone. It's to find that area that feels mild to moderately uncomfortable, be able to relax and reduce your tension. You're not fighting it. You're not grimacing. You're not clenching. You're relaxing into it. You're doing slow, slow breaths and being able to do that over time. Because again, this is an overtime thing. This
Yeah.
isn't, we're stretching one time. You're going to be good to go tomorrow. This
Yeah.
is a lifelong practice.
It's forever. I wanted to also ask you about your favorite shoulder drill because hip was like 90-90, ankle, we've got that lean. So many great shoulder mobility exercises. So what's your favorite?
One of my favorites is called a wall plank, and
Okay.
it looks like nothing, but it feels like everything. Hard to explain on a podcast. I do have these sprinkled throughout my page on Instagram, but essentially you look like you're setting up like a perfect plank on a wall. And as you press your shoulder blades and your elbows into the wall, you kind of sink back into your hips. And what that's doing is we're upwardly rotating the shoulder blade. So we're pushing into what's called our serratus anterior. We're expanding from the rib cage as we breathe, and we're helping to stack our rib cage and the pelvis in a more ideal fashion. And then we're pressing into the wall and gaining a little bit more shoulder mobility. So it helps to really expand the rib cage, get our shoulder blades mobilizing while we're strengthening and while we're mobilizing the shoulder. So it's one of my favorite ways to like reconnect to the body.
I can visually see it, but am I drawing my hips back kind of like a down dog, or it's like a plank position?
It's you're standing against the wall and you're in a plank, and then as your hips come back, you're pushing into the wall even more. It's gonna, if you're doing it right, your knees do kind of stay stacked over your ankles and you feel
Okay,
like you're gonna fall backwards because again, you started standing upright and now you're just
cool.
shifting your hips back. But it's that press into the wall that helps to increase that shoulder activation, reduce that tension and that upper traps. Again, if you're doing it right. I mean, there's so many cues that I, again, walk people through as
Yeah.
we're doing it together, but um, it's one of my favorite weird shoulder mobility exercises.
And Doc Jen Fit is all over Instagram and has been for 10 years. She's got so many incredible videos on there, but also has your app, Gen Health. So please make sure you check out all of her videos after this. She's the best in the biz as far as mobility and physical therapy goes. We talked a little bit briefly about foam rolling. Is there
Mhm.
one specific tool that you might suggest someone to have if they're wanting to get into mobility training?
You don't need a specific tool, but the tools that I specifically love, the IntelliRoll is a foam roller I've been using for years now because it has like a spine zone and it has the crevices that support the body a little bit more.
Okay.
Um,
IntelliRoll.
Yeah, it's called IntelliRoll. And
Cool.
then the other one is Tune Up Fitness. So her balls help to provide grip and a little bit more ease into the body rather than a lacrosse ball that can usually be really stiff and people and have people grimacing against it. Again, the goal of mobility and down regulation. It's relaxation. So if you're foam rolling or using a super hard tool or whatever it is to try to break something up, quote unquote, we're not doing that. We cannot manipulate fascia. We can only talk to the nervous system. And through the nervous system, we can help fascia to slide and glide and move a little bit more fluidly and feel a little bit more range of motion in that moment directly after we use a tool. But we're not breaking anything up. It's all modulation of the nervous system. So making sure that we're not going, and there's actually studies that have shown adverse effects from using super hard tools. So do not dig with the intention to break up.
What about something like a Theragun or I don't even know what the brand name would be that's not Theragun.
Yeah.
Hyperice. You know, it's like massage gun,
Yes.
massage gun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Massage gun.
Yeah.
So any tool that we use on our body, it's talking to these mechanoreceptors underneath the skin that talk to our brain, and they detect touch, pressure, vibration, and heat. So if we start to think about all these tools and what they're doing on our body, I mean, especially a massage gun, right? It's creating vibration, touch, heat after a while after we're using it. All of it is helping to modulate our nervous system. So it's, again, not breaking anything up. It's great to do to help to relax the area. But if you're always having to massage gun or foam roll or do one certain area of the body, I would go back to why is that feeling so locked up all of the time? Like, is there something else I could be adding in or doing to either create more safety and stability in that area? Maybe it needs more coordination and stability, or maybe it does need more mobility. But if we're always attacking one area, I would be curious. I would want to ask yourself a little bit more of why. What else could I be doing? What else could I be addressing? And just know that they're not bad. They're great tools. Maybe don't go for the most expensive one because they're all doing the same thing. So yeah, we're just creating vibration, which talks to our nervous system.
Amazing. Awesome. Jen, thank you so much for being here. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time and all of your knowledge. Tell us more about where people can find you and like learn more about all this amazing education that you gave us today.
Yeah. So if you like to learn the why behind things, my husband, also a doctor of physical therapy, and we have a podcast called The Optimal Body. And every other week we talk about a super common, like whether it's an adjustment, foam rolling, scraping, like all these tools or diagnoses that people have been given. And we go into the research on what it really means, what it does, and what you need to know and how you can help your body. So the Optimal Body podcast is where you can find that. Gen Health, you can sign up completely for free and use our Discover section to search neck pain, back pain, morning mobility, blah, 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 like anything. And it makes Instagram searchable, essentially. We also have plans on there. You can try out our membership. You can try out some of our courses that we have available on Gen Health, but it's also just a free search engine that you can use and find anything at the tip of your fingers.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Gosh, we could have talked about cupping and scraping. There's so many other
So
tools,
many.
right? So, Optimal Body is where we can find you. And again, thank you so much for your time. We loved it. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.